So let's really generate the motivation to develop the conventional bodhicitta, the aspiration for enlightenment based on compassion for all living beings, and the ultimate bodhicitta, the wisdom realizing emptiness that will actually clear our mind of all the defilements. And think that this is the real meaning of my life. This is what makes my life worthwhile and meaningful. Okay. So, last week we were talking about the measure of having trained the mind. And so we had just finished talking about where it says primary importance should be given to the two witnesses. The two witnesses being other sentient beings and how they comment on the change that they've seen in us. And then the internal witness, which is our own evaluation of ourselves, that can see how we have changed. Okay? And of these two witnesses, our own internal evaluation is the one that's most important, because we're the only one who can really see our mind, aside from the Buddhas and beings with accurate clairvoyance. Okay? And the main criteria we use to evaluate our mind is there less self-centeredness than there used to be? Is there less self-grasping, less greed and attachment, less anger and belligerence? Okay? Or is there more? If there's less of these things, our practice is going well. If there's more, then we need to go back and really figure out what's happening. Okay? So now, the next phrase, the next slogan or phrase in the thought training says, constantly cultivate only a joyful mind. That one sounds good, huh? Constantly cultivate only a joyful mind. Our depressed mind says, I don't want to, it's too hard. I remember, actually, when I was living in France, Khenzo Jampa Tekchok would always tell us, keep your mind happy. And I didn't know what in the world he meant. It's like, how do you keep your mind happy? This is, how do you do it? I mean, your mind's either happy or unhappy. How do you keep it happy? And it seemed like such a puzzle to me. Yeah. And then as I began to practice more, and notice that depending on what I pay attention to, my mind is happy or unhappy. And depending on how I interpret what I'm paying attention to, my mind is happy or unhappy. But then it made me see, well, I could have a happy mind by, switching my mind away from the things that I ruminate upon uselessly and to something that is beneficial. Okay. But when he used to say that, I used to go, what's he talking about? If I could cultivate a happy mind, I wouldn't be asking all these questions. But that's the whole thing. What he was teaching us is how to have a happy mind and how to do it ourselves. Yeah, no drugs, no tranquilizers, no pep pills, nothing. Yeah, just depending on what we pay attention to and how we pay attention to it. Okay. So the commentary by Nangpa Kyapel says, having experienced the flavor of the teaching through meditation, whatever adverse conditions such as suffering and ill repute may arise, if your meditation is unaffected by such discouraging conditions, And you only generate happiness and rejoicing, thinking the practice of mind training through giving and taking has been meaningful. Then the counteracting forces have been initially effective. That's another one of those long sentences. Okay? What it means is that no matter what happens, whether we're suffering or we have ill repute and people criticize us and trash us, if our mind, and especially in meditation, is unaffected by that, and instead we're thinking, oh, practicing giving and taking has really been meaningful and beneficial, then, we have a joyful mind. Okay? So, sometimes it happens that when something that we normally react to in a negative way happens, initially we practice the thought training, and then we say, oh, this isn't so bad, and I feel very happy, and my mind's calm, and this is good, I'm getting somewhere. And then we don't keep it up, and instead our mind goes back to the usual way of thinking, and then 3 days later it's like, I'm so mad, or I'm so frightened, I'm scared, So it's not just an initial thing of thinking, of doing the taking and giving and thinking that it works, and then saying, okay, I've done that, now I have a happy mind. It's a thing of constantly keeping it up and constantly keeping that view in our mind. Okay? In brief, it is a great mistake to destroy your virtue through anger that rankles over slight hardships encountered in the course of mind training. Okay, that means don't complain. Because getting angry at problems that we encounter, just isn't worthwhile. And here he talks about it, slight hardships. And the mind that rankles over slight hardships. But the way our mind looks at things, we never have a slight hardship, do we? We always have a Mount Meru size hardship. Yeah. Other people have little hardships, but our problems are just completely insurmountable, horrible, the most dreadful thing that could ever happen. Isn't that our view? Yeah? Anything that happens to me is like, oh, intolerable. Yeah? A problem that happens to somebody else, that's one of the little ones. Okay? But when we're called upon to endure hardship, we're very faint-hearted because our problems appear to us so enormous. Yeah? So that this is our very limited perspective, isn't it? Yeah. We hear somebody else's problem, somebody else is sick, they have to have surgery. Oh, that's a pity, that's too bad. And then we forget, don't we? And then it's, oh, they didn't serve what I like for dinner. And that becomes just amazing. How can they not do that? Okay? So this is the mind. This is the mind that creates our reality. Okay, but when we are able to work with that mind and instead cultivate some courage that's able to bear a little bit of hardship, and we have to start with the small hardships. So that means that we really have to admit that we have some small hardships, that they aren't all huge. Okay? Now I know that takes something out of our daily drama. To have to admit that our problems, our hardships are not enormous. I mean, that really reduces our daily life drama, doesn't it? Yeah, and it reduces the sense of I, and it reduces our ability to attract people's attention due to our overwhelming suffering. But if we practice it and we're willing to give those things up, we actually wind up happier, don't we? Yeah, we wind up happier. Yeah, and we're happier without everybody else, pitying us and paying attention to us because of our overwhelming, dreadful problems. Yeah? And we actually can be happy without having center stage doing our Sarah Bernhardt trip. Yeah? You know our Sarah Bernhardt. I knew one person. Oh, she must have been an incarnation of Sarah Bernhardt. Not that I wasn't, but maybe there were two of us. And she would feel a little bit bad, and she'd just lie down in the middle of the meditation hall, completely just lie there sprawled, and everybody had to step over her, seriously, or so uncomfortable. You need 15 pillows, and they had to be the right size pillow, some for under the right knee and some under the left knee and some under your tush, and some here and some there. And if the pillows weren't all arranged properly, it was really dreadful, So this is the way our mind works, isn't it? It's not just my friend's mind. We have this own mind ourselves, don't we? Okay. The great Shawopa said, there is no worse form of abuse than to say your spiritual friend has no peace of mind. Okay, so what that is meaning is, to say one of our spiritual friends has no peace of mind means that you're saying they're not practicing well. Okay? Because if you have no peace of mind and yet you've studied all of this, then, practice isn't going so well. Okay, regarding the actual measure of the trained mind, the text says, the measure of a trained mind is that it is turned away. Or another translation, a reversed attitude indicates transformation. Okay, I think the second translation is better. A reverse attitude indicates transformation. So the explanation says, this refers to the arising of an experience of the stages of practice in your mind, from contemplation of the preliminary practices up to the training in the ultimate awakening mind, so that an awareness of the need to make the most of freedom and opportunity under all circumstances without wasting them arises naturally in the mind. That paragraph was one sentence. Okay? You can see my editor mind coming here. Okay. So, what it means, a reversed attitude indicates transformation, is that, through practicing everything from the beginning of the path, the preliminaries, up through the wisdom realizing emptiness, then what arises is a mind that is able to make best use of a precious human life without wasting it. So if we're able to do that, then our mind has turned away from cyclic existence, hasn't it? And from self-complacent peace. Okay? And so the signs of the trained mind, okay, and here it's very interesting because the different thought training texts explain things slightly differently. In this text, it has another phrase for that. There are 5 great marks of the trained mind. And so it's another phrase. In the regular 7-point training of the mind that we have, these 5 points are actually a subcategory of a reversed attitude indicates a transformation. So you can see that there's just different ways of outlining it. Okay? But there's 5 great marks, or 5 ways in which somebody has turned away, has reversed the mind if you're practicing thought training. So the first one here is called the great hero, or another translation is the great-minded one. Okay? The great hero who constantly familiarizes him or herself with the awakening mind in the knowledge that it is the essence of all teachings. So somebody is a great hero, a great-minded one, if they constantly familiarize themselves with the 2 bodhicittas. Okay? In other words, they devote their whole time to cultivating bodhicitta. They don't waste any time. And this is a reversal from hanging out, playing, joking, entertainment, chatting, and other things of diversion that we use. Okay? So it's the usual kind of mind that we have that likes to waste time. The reverse of that is the mind that is really devoted to practicing bodhicitta all the time. Okay? So to have this mind, we have to have an understanding of precious human life and of impermanence and death. Okay? If we don't have an understanding of impermanence and death, we're not going to have any energy to reverse these bad habits through which we waste an incredible amount of time. Okay? Now, when we hear the teachings like this, sometimes we beat ourselves up and we say, oh, I'm such a bad practitioner. I waste so much time. You know, I'm just really a lousy practitioner. I need to remember I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. I've got to practice harder. Ugh. You know? And we try and push ourselves. And while sometimes at the beginning giving ourselves a nudge is very helpful, yeah, we can't sustain that for a long time. We need to really bring wisdom in here. And so what that means is it's not sufficient just to say, I'm going to die, you know, and what's going to happen to me after death. It means really thinking about it, you know, and like, okay, I'm going to die. What does that mean? What's that going to be like? You know, to have everything here that I'm so comfortable with evaporate. And my consciousness goes on alone, and I don't have this body, I don't have my social status, I don't have my money, you know, and the mind's just buffeted around by karmic appearances. And am I going to have any control over my mind? Am I going to be able to deal with that experience? Yeah? And so really thinking about it, and when we think about it like that, you know, something gets a little nervous inside. Yeah? And then we use that nervousness, that discomfort, to say, okay, that's why I really want to put my energy into cultivating bodhicitta. Because if I cultivate it now, then at the time of death in the intermediate stage, I'll be able to have some familiarity and be able to continue on with that practice. Okay? So we have to have that wisdom, not just a lot of shoulds. Okay? At the beginning, like I said, we need to nudge ourselves, and sometimes we need to should ourselves, but we can't sustain that for a long period of time. We have to really do the meditation that brings some internal awareness so that naturally our mind shifts what it's interested in. Okay? If our mind isn't naturally shifting what it's interested in, then we need to do more meditation on impermanence and death. Okay? Okay, then the second mark, yeah, is the great disciplinarian, or another translation is the great holder of restraint. Okay? So this person is someone who is careful to avoid even the slightest offense out of his conviction in the law of cause and effect. So this person who practices great restraint has a very deep conviction in cause and effect, in karma and its results. And that conviction aids them in protecting themselves from getting involved in the 10 non-virtues of body, speech, and mind. And it increases their mindfulness and their introspective alertness. Okay? And so this very deep conviction in cause and effect, this comes about through really doing some meditation on karma and its effects. Not just hearing the teachings and saying that makes some sense, yeah, but really thinking about it and really thinking about karma as we go through the day and we see various people and various events, and applying our understanding of karma to those events that we see, that we read about in the newspaper, and looking at people's actions, thinking of what the results are going to be, looking at people's present situations, thinking of what the karmic causes can be. So both on the positive and negative happiness and suffering side, to do this on both, okay? So that we really gain some sense that there is a link between our actions and what we experience. And this really takes a lot of familiarity to generate, because we talk a lot about karma, but when push comes to shove, we don't always act like we believe in karma. Yeah? We were talking about it this morning, we always hear, oh, generosity is the cause of wealth. Yes, I believe in karma. Generosity is the cause of wealth. But then when it comes to being generous, we think, and other people tell us, oh, you've got to take care of yourself first, so make sure you have a nice, huge amount to take care of yourself, and then you can give a little bit away. Okay? So that kind of attitude is as if we don't really believe in karma. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean that we go and give everything away, because then that's impractical and then we become burdensome on other people. So I'm not talking about going to the other extreme and, just making ourselves a burden for others. Okay? But I'm talking about the mind, that do we really believe that generosity brings wealth? Do we really believe that generosity, forget about it even bringing wealth, that we create merit, which will fertilize our minds so we can gain realizations of the path? Do we really believe that? Yeah. Do we believe that doing the 35 Buddhas and Vajrasattva practice with the 4 opponent powers purifies our negative karma? Because if we really believe it, we're going to want to do the practice. If we don't really believe it, then, I'm just too tired. Yeah. Yeah, going to sleep, that will relieve my negative karma. Yeah, okay. So really cultivating that familiarity with the idea of cause and effect. And then, and so you see, all these things, they all depend upon practice and familiarization. They're not just, I should. Okay? They're all practice and familiarization, and there's specific meditations that you do to develop these understandings. Okay? Okay, so the great holder of restraint, this is reversed from somebody who is completely careless about their ethical conduct, who has no sense of conscientiousness, no mindfulness, no introspective alertness. They just plow ahead to get what they want and don't even think about the effects of their actions on other people. Yeah. And a lot of times we're like that, aren't we? We have some idea in our mind, and sometimes we're not even conscious of when we're doing this. We just have some real strong idea in our mind, and we just plow ahead, and we don't care about how it influences other people. Yeah? And we don't even think about, the ethical aspect of it either. And so you can see this, like sometimes when we're being, somebody asks us a question and we get defensive, so we make up excuses, we joke around, we play around, we don't answer the question, We never think at that time, oh, my actions are affecting somebody else, do we? We're only thinking, oh, this is good, I'm covering my own tush. Yeah? Do you get what I mean? Yeah? Like rather than answer or explain the situation, we misinterpret the whole thing, we become defensive, and then we just say and do things to cover ourselves when it isn't even necessary to do that. And not thinking at all of the effect on other people. Okay? So this is all about becoming more aware, isn't it? Okay, then the great ascetic is the third one. Okay, so the great ascetic is somebody who can bear hardships in the course of subduing the disturbing emotions in his or her mind. Okay, so somebody who can endure hardship in the process of subduing the emotions. So what kind of hardship are you likely to have to go through in the process of subduing your emotions? Well, one of them is stopping yourself from just taking off and going in an habitual pattern. And that can take great effort and a lot of struggle to bring the mind back to something reasonable instead of just letting it go off and, oh, they did this to me and that and oh, this is terrible, or I'm sick, I'm going to be dying tomorrow morning, So just, it can be a hardship to look at what the mind's doing and just press the pause button so that we don't get carried away by it. Or just to sit there and watch all these crazy thoughts, but without buying into them and without reacting to them. Just looking, that can be a great hardship, because sometimes when our mind is like that, we want to indulge in those negative thoughts, and if we pause to watch them, we see how painful they are, and then we don't like how painful they are, and we want to numb out. So it's strange, isn't it? Either we want to indulge in these painful thoughts, or if we realize they're painful, then we want to numb out. Because, anything but sit there and just watch. Without judgment about the crazy mind's little trips. Okay, so that can be a hardship. So these kinds of hardships, the great ascetic isn't somebody who, sleeps on nails and walks across fire and, pierces their body and stuff like that. Okay, the great ascetic is somebody who can work with their mind and can deal with the discomfort of taming the mind. And reversing the negative patterns, the harmful patterns. Okay? So this one, the great ascetic is somebody who this is reversed from running away from looking at ourselves. Okay, you know how we run away from looking at ourselves? So this is reversed from that. So we're talking about a reversed attitude indicates the transformation. So how do we know that our mind is getting transformed? In that things where we used to numb out, we're ready to just sit with now. Okay, that we're able to be a little bit more honest with ourselves about things. I started reading Jarvis Master's autobiography the other day. That bird has my wings. It's a good book. It's a difficult book to read because it's painful. But in the introduction he's saying, because he's an inmate on death row, how he has just a little, the filler in a ballpoint pen to write with. They don't even give you the whole ballpoint pen, but just the filler part. And how difficult it was for him to start writing this autobiography, because he had to ask himself, am I honest with what I write? Because it's so easy when you write the story of your life to put, you know, somebody did this to me, and this person did that to me, and, you know, and then the things we did wrong to kind of, you know, just show it the other way, how it wasn't really me, and all this kind of stuff. And so he said it was really, he had to challenge himself to be honest. Yeah? But the thing is that when we challenge ourselves to be honest, when we're honest, when we don't run away from it, and when we don't exaggerate it on the negative side either, but when we are honest with ourselves, then we're able to settle things in our mind and our hearts. You know, when they say the truth will set you free, I think that's what it means. When we don't lie to ourselves, that's how we're able to find freedom. Yeah. When we're willing to look and acknowledge, you know, I blew this. Yeah. Because only when we can acknowledge that can we fix it and purify it. Mm-hmm. Okay. So this is an ascetic practice, being, you know, developing this kind of honesty. Then the fourth one, the great practitioner of virtue. Okay, also translated as the great saint. But the great practitioner of virtue, who never separates the activities of his body and speech from the tenfold conduct of the great vehicle. So there's said to be 10 Mahayana practices. And I don't know if it means the 10 far-reaching attitudes. I think there's another list of 10. But I don't know what they are. Might have to see if I can find that somewhere. Okay? But it's somebody whose actions of body, speech, and mind are never separated from the cultivation of bodhicitta and are permeated by bodhicitta. And so this is a reversal from acting under the influence of self-centered thought. Okay? Acting with bodhicitta is a reversal of acting under the influence of the self-centered thought. Okay, then 5 is the great yogi. So, is someone who constantly practices the yoga of the bodhicitta and its associated teachings. Okay? So somebody who cultivates the bodhicitta that hasn't yet been cultivated, and who increases the bodhicitta that has been cultivated so that they don't regress. So this great yogi is someone who is reversed from the self-centered thought and the self-grasping ignorance. Okay? So these 5 great kinds of beings, as much as we're able to imitate them, that is indicative of the success of our practice. Okay? So it means our mind is becoming familiar with the thought training. So it involves practice, doesn't it? Yeah? And I think one of the big things, and this will probably come later, to see, is when something that used to just, our mind used to go completely nuts with it, now our mind doesn't go completely nuts with it. Yeah? Just seeing that, then we know our practice is getting somewhere. Yeah? So I think we all know different things where our mind goes totally berserky. Yeah? And so when our mind doesn't go berserky, we know we're getting somewhere. Or our mind goes berserky, but we're able to recognize it's berserky. And so instead of just keeping on with it and, multiplying it. What was that thing? Exponential growth, yeah. Instead of exponential growth, compounded interest of our negativities, that we're able to catch it when it's small and apply the antidote, then that means that we're getting somewhere in our practice. And we should congratulate ourselves. And not just look at what, we've done wrong, but really see, okay, there's some progress here. This is good. Okay, then the text says, the trained mind retains control even when distracted. Or another translation is, one is capable one is trained if one is capable, although distracted. Okay? So what this means is the trained mind is capable, it exerts control, even when we're in a situation that's distracting. Okay? So, just as a skilled rider will not fall if his horse bolts while he is distracted. Okay? Similarly, even if we inadvertently hear unpleasant remarks, such as the accusations from hostile quarters, or we are criticized and marked, as there are many who even criticize the Buddha, the transcendent subduer, we should understand that it is undoubtedly the result of negative actions we have committed. All one sentence. You see, Tibetan, the way they write Tibetan, it isn't nice short sentences. They put many clauses together and join, when this, independence on that, having done this, da-da-da. So the sentences can be quite long. So if you try and translate it like that, it comes out like this. Okay? So if the skillful rider is distracted, even if their horse gets startled and bolts, they don't fall off the horse because they're so attuned to what's going on, they can rebalance themselves immediately. Okay? So it could be maybe somebody who's a good driver who, even if they're talking a little bit, can, still put the brakes on in time to stop from a collision. Okay? Now, this does not pertain to people who are texting when they're driving. Because when you're texting when you're driving, you are beyond distraction because you aren't even looking at the road. Yeah? So, don't text when you drive for your own benefit and for the benefit of others. Okay? And don't hold a cell phone when you're driving either. It's really dangerous. Okay, so I don't want anybody taking this in the thought training section and say, oh, but I'm just, I'm a cell phone person and you can drive even when I'm distracted. That's what this line means. Okay? No, sorry. Okay, but what we're trying to get to in our practice is having a mind that even if we're paying attention to one thing, if out of left field somebody insults us, or we get injured, or somebody robs us, or some misfortune happens, we don't completely fall apart. In other words, we're able to rebalance ourselves fairly quickly. Okay? And so especially here, he uses the example of criticism. If you just get criticized, when you least expect it, then just, remember that many people are going to criticize us because actually they criticize the Buddha also. So instead of getting whacked out by it, just remember this is a result of our own negative karma. Okay? Now, we have the slogan here at the Abbey, don't plan for more than half a day in advance because things change. And you can really see that sometimes when you first come to the Abbey and things start changing, you get completely freaked out. It's like, but I had my day planned. And what do you mean, you know, somebody's calling on the phone and I have to take care of that? Or what do you mean that the whole community is going to focus on this project? Or what do you mean that somebody is busy and I have to cook for them? You know, and just, this isn't even dealing with criticism and misfortune. It's just dealing with ordinary change of plans. And we can see how sometimes we're really thrown for a loop when plans change. Yeah, and then as you've been at the Abbey longer and longer, and plans change more and more, and you get more familiar with it, and you really remember the slogan, don't plan for half a day in advance, then when things change, you flow with it. You don't get upset. It just happens. Yeah, isn't that true? Haven't you learned? You know, are you more flexible now than you were when you first moved here? Yeah, what do you think? Yeah, okay. So that's this kind of example. Now, we need to take that and become that flexible, even if somebody criticizes us, not just an ordinary change of plans, but if something disturbing happens. Okay? Yeah. So it's not just instead of the electrician coming, the plumber comes. It's the electrical thing completely shorts out and doesn't work at all. Or your computer internet connection just decided not to work. That's what happened to me today. Yeah. And so beyond that, but really something, somebody criticizing you, something that's catastrophic, or an accident, or hearing some really bad news, or something like that, when our mind can rebalance itself instead of getting really upset and freaked out and whacked out by something that's happening. Yeah? So if we can do that, that's an indication that our practice is going well, because we're much more flexible. Yeah. Whereas, if every time we hear a little bit of bad news, our mind just falls apart, yeah, and we can't function, then, we really need to do some more practice. Yeah. Okay. So this is very practical advice, isn't it? It's very practical, and we can see it in our daily life. Yeah? Because, we're always going to have bad news. And there's always going to be accidents. There's always going to be things that happen. And so how able are we to rebalance ourselves when hardships arise unexpectedly? Okay, so practicing the thought training teaching. Yeah. Or if every time there's some hardship, if every time we hear that, somebody's sick, we fall apart and we dissolve in tears, then, we need to practice with that and do some more meditation, This is natural. This is part of samsara. I've got to able to be stable when I hear this kind of thing. Otherwise, how can I benefit anybody? Okay, so really working with these situations. So we all have our own ones where we get thrown out of whack, don't we? Yeah? Your day's gone very nicely, and then somebody in the community does something you least expect, or you get some phone call, You know how I'm always joking, can you please schedule your catastrophes? It just would be so much nicer, wouldn't it be, if catastrophes could be scheduled so you knew what to expect. Okay, today at 9:03, somebody's going to criticize me. I'm expecting it. When it happens, I know to just be calm and center myself, and I don't need to take it seriously because this person's suffering. So you have it all, in your daily schedule. You're all ready for it from when it comes. It would be so nice if life were like that, because then we could plan ahead for our hardships. But it doesn't happen like that, does it? It doesn't happen like that at all. And it usually comes, you know, right when we're just kind of gliding along, thinking, oh, things are so nice, then whammo, you know. Okay? So it's a thing of, you know, having the thought training practices deep enough in our heart so that we can, you know, access them quickly when those kind of situations arise. Okay? Where was I? Okay, so there's a quotation here. Whoever criticizes me or inflicts harm upon others or similarly ridicules me, may they be blessed with enlightenment. When a thought such as this one expressed in Guide to a Bodhisattva's Way of Life arises naturally in your heart, that is a sign of having trained the mind. Okay? So when somebody criticizes me or inflicts harm on me or inflicts harm on somebody else that I care about, or if they ridicule me or do something really nasty and mean, may my first thought be, may they become enlightened. May they be free of suffering. Okay? So if this kind of thought arises naturally in our mind, then that's a sign that our mind training is successful, isn't it? Yeah? So that's why, you know, when we do our dedication after lunch, we dedicate not only for the people who honor us and receive us and praise us, but we dedicate for all the people who harm us and cause us difficulties. And so hopefully by saying this every day and reminding ourselves of this every day, if we aren't spaced out when we do the dedication after the meals, then we're familiarizing our mind with that. And then when some situation happens, that's the thought that we bring to mind. You know, this person who harmed me is suffering. Yeah, they're doing what they're doing due to their own incredible pain. Yeah. Therefore, they're an object of compassion. Yeah. So rather than feel overwhelmed by what they did to me, focus on their pain. Okay? And be able to see our pain as, you know, this is the ripening of negative karma. This is samsara. Yeah? My friend Alex, whenever I would call him to complain about this or that, he would say, what do you expect? This is samsara. Oh, you're right. Yeah. I wasn't expecting samsara. I was expecting Pure Land. I'm wrong. Yeah. Okay. So, in meditation, if we're less distracted by afflictions, that's a sign that our practice is going well. If we meet situations that in which our afflictions would arise and they don't arise, then our practice is going well, we're making progress. We should really try and be mindful in our daily life, because if we are, then this kind of awareness comes very automatic. Okay? So it's kind of like when you're learning to drive. At the beginning you have to like sit on the edge and pay attention to everything because you're not so familiar with it. But as you become more familiar, then, you know, your fear of driving goes and you become more confident. So in the same way with our practice, the fear of like, I'm going to blow it goes and we become more confident. I remember when I first started to practice, I was just so terrified of my attachment. You know, when I went from Nepal back to visit my family, and there was all the objects of attachment all around, you know, the first trip back, I was just petrified. It's like, I'm going to go there, and my attachment's just going to overwhelm me, and I'm going to forget about the Dharma, and the Dharma will be a has-been, and I will be right back into the situation I was in before. I was terrified of that happening, you know, so I was always kind of like this, you know, not very relaxed, but, you know. But now I can go into the same kind of situation, and the mind is more relaxed because of the practice and being more familiar, you know, and like I'm less interested in those objects of attachment, not completely uninterested, but less interested. Yeah, so it doesn't mean I don't have to be mindful. I still have to be quite mindful and attentive, but you know, there's some way to work with these things there now because of the habit. Yeah, it was very interesting this last Sunday when I went to, I was asked to give the sermons, I guess you would call it that, at the Unity Church in Spokane. I did 2 services, and they play music there, yeah? And I'm very sensitive to music. You know, I mean, music can make my mind go here, it can make my mind go there. I hear a melody and it sticks in my mind and I can't get rid of it for a long time. And if it's a song I'm familiar with, my mind goes off into, you know, who I was with when I used to hear that song and what I was doing and how I felt and, you know, all of that stuff, you know. So when they started playing music at the service, I just tried to get very still and just visualize myself as Chenrezig and just stay focused on that visualization. And just, you know, stay focused on the visualization and keep my mind still, you know, because that's what I had to do. And I was able to go to that right away because I knew if I didn't, my mind was going to be, you know, because they were doing these things with the jazzy melodies and they're all, you know, songs to welcome each other and you're clapping and everybody's clapping and swaying. And it's like, boy, I can get into that. But no, stay still inside and focused. Okay, so just even remembering to do it and then, you know, practicing with that. Okay, so those are the kind of examples that we're talking about. Okay. Or somebody invites you out to dinner and says, "What do you want?" And you've been in the monastery so long that you're thinking, "Oh, good, now I can pick what I want," and your mind goes crazy. Yeah. So at that moment, then no. Yeah. Just doesn't matter. Actually, I found that when people take me out to eat and ask me what I want, I just get confused because I'm not used to paying attention to such small details like what you're going to eat. You know, whatever there is, you eat it. Okay? And this thing of, you know, how people can spend a half an hour, you know, talking about what to order in the restaurant. Okay, so, you know, so just working with the mind in all these situations, whichever way your mind is inclined to get out of whack, you know, being able to control it. Or when you go to a family dinner, or you're with people that know how to push your buttons, yeah, then, you know, being well prepared, and if one of those button pushing sentences come out, you're just able to stay still and say, you know, doesn't matter that somebody said that. I don't have to react. Yeah, they're saying this because of their own suffering. I don't need to take it personally. Yeah, so if we're able to do that, then this is indicating that our practice is going ahead. Okay, so there's a little bit of time for questions, like 1 minute. Questions? Yes? Mm-hmm.
That is one of the reasons why our mind is hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it actually is not that easy to do.
Okay. Yeah, so you're saying because self-centered thought is so pervasive, that makes the taking and giving meditation hard to do. Right. Because taking and giving is the opposite of our normal way of thinking. Yeah.
It's not like I don't like doing it, but it goes, oftentimes it feels flat to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, does it feel flat or does it feel difficult?
But I feel more flat.
Yeah. It feels flat because we're just doing it like, oh yes, I'm taking on the suffering of others, I'm giving them my happiness, what's for lunch? That kind of flat. That's because we're just doing it in an intellectual way. We're not really thinking about it. Yeah?
That's when I try to figure out what would really be helpful for somebody.
Yeah. I mean, a good way to start is in an ordinary life situation when you find like your mind doesn't want to do something and yet you know that it's beneficial for somebody else, then to do it, oh, I'm taking on their suffering of doing it, I'm giving them my happiness. Okay, I'm going to bear the suffering of doing the dishes and I'm going to give them the happiness of resting after lunch. Okay, so just try it with these kinds of things, like simple things that the mind doesn't want to do, But our mind can be quite lazy and, really find all sorts of ways not to do these things. And so to practice taking and giving with that, with even those small sufferings, and then you can work up to bigger sufferings, thinking of taking somebody's heart disease and somebody's grief and stuff like that. Yeah. Oh, the number 4 great one is the great saint, I think. Yeah, the great saint. Or the other translation was the great practitioner of virtue. Okay, so somebody who never separates their body, speech, and mind from bodhicitta.